Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Welcome, bienvenue. It's Game Over Montreal and Game Over Toronto. I'm here with Dominic Jones, and he's got a much bigger smile on his face than I imagined when we were chatting after the first period. That was a game, Dom. Not the way I think anybody expected it to finish, considering how it
No.
started. But
Yeah.
hey, that's sports, baby.
Yeah,
Seven straight goals.
it was exciting. I've been watching Leafs games for a long time. I don't know if I've ever seen them score 7 unanswered goals in a game, let alone 2 periods. So it was, as a Leafs fan, it was gratifying to see something I haven't seen before happen with this team that wasn't a bad thing. Because so often with the Leafs, it's the comical thing happens to them. They give up 7 unanswered goals. They lose to a Zamboni driver. For once, it was nice to have it go the other way. There's a scene in The Dark Knight Rises when Batman is talking. So that's how that feels like, and that's how I feel like like right now as a Leafs fan coming out of that one. So that's what it's like to win a game where you went down 3-0. Oh, that was nice. That was good. So I'm feeling good after the start of this one, which I definitely wasn't after the first period. I was expecting to have to come on here and defend the indefensible, but instead it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of "it was 3-0" tweets coming out there all over Leafs Nation. Tweets or blue sky posts, whatever you call them. I think people call them skeets. I'm not on that yet. I don't know if I can do
No,
skeets. Posts make
I can't
sense.
figure it out. Yeah.
It's gonna take me years to stop saying tweets because I'm so used to Twitter. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, I think the "it was 3-1" is a little bit weak. That's like
Mm.
some Ottawa Senators fan energy to do that in the regular season after like playoff stuff. But you know what? Enjoy the moments because
Yeah.
that's one of those things with the difference between Habs fans and Leafs fans over the last couple of years is like
Mhm.
Habs fans expect their team to suck. So like
Mm.
every time that things go well, everyone like the vibes are like immaculate. Whereas when you got that expectation of competing, you
Mhm.
have to be good or else it's just like your soul is crushed. So when you have those good feelings, as far as I'm concerned, have
Yeah.
fun. You know,
Zach, Zach and I were talking on Game Over Toronto after the last game about how like hot and cold the Leafs team and fandom goes, where you go from like feeling like the sky is falling one week to hey, we're on top of the world the next. And I think it's that exact feeling that you're describing, where there's the expectation is to be good, and the expectation has been there to be good for a long time, and they have never quite lived up to it. So you get a lot of whiplash in terms of how things go back and forth like that.
all right, I'm getting a message here from I believe Kay saying that there might be a delay in my audio, so I'm gonna try to fix that on my end if I can. But in the meantime, obviously, we've got a great show for you tonight. I'm just gonna run it down, so I apologize if the audio is a bit late on the video. But we're gonna talk about how wild of a game this was, the back and forth that it went through, lining on the power play, and how that shot just seems automatic, even though everyone can kind of see it coming. The Xhekaj versus Reeves stuff. We're going to talk about Joseph Wall because, my God, what was that tonight? I know he's good, but my goodness. Willie Nylander, who, again, by far my favorite Leaf. And then we're going to talk about some continuing stories. Montembeault's struggles with consistency this season, the Leafs special teams situation. And then we're going to, in our last segment, before we go to the press conference or the overtime period where the chat gets to ask their questions, we're going to kind of do an out of market check-in. We're gonna ask each other questions. How's the fan base feeling about this? How's the team feeling about this? That kind of stuff. Kind of get some like maybe different questions that we wouldn't ask normally from our own group. So it's gonna be fun. I'm here with Dom, but before we get into it too much, I got to tell you about Hyperdrive Hockey. All right, so folks, this show it's really coming together. Like I'm so proud of this crew. Max Van Hoot, Daphne Malboeuf, Kevin Laramie. They're just excellent professional hockey commentators. They're doing a fantastic job. They're coming at it in a very different way than what you'll find everywhere else. It's fun, it's informative, and it's a different way of digesting what goes on in the NHL. I think it's really dynamic and fun. You got to check it out. Haven't heard a single negative word from anybody who has taken the chance. So head on over to the Game Over Network channel, which you can find through clicking if you're listening to this or watching on the Game Over Montreal channel. Click on our channel, scroll down to the bottom. All of our brand channels are at the bottom there, or you can just search at Game Over Network on YouTube, or you can go to our website. www.thegameovernetwork.com, and check that out. I'm seeing on my own feed now there is quite a delay, so I'm going to try to put a bigger offset on my mic, and hopefully that works, and we'll get closer to synced up. Still seems a little bit off to me, but hopefully it'll be a little bit better on stream. Keep me informed on that, folks. Keep me in the loop. Tell me if it's really bad, and I'll continue trying to fix it. All right, let's talk about how this game started. Obviously, the first period, the Habs ran the Leafs kind of out of the building in a way. Joseph Woll was incredible in keeping it to like 1-0 throughout most of that first period, really. And then it was just those, I think it was like 9 seconds between the line A power play marker and then the Josh Anderson rush chance that put the Canadiens really in control of this game. But Woll really prevented the game from getting out of control early and allowed this insane comeback to happen.
Yeah, he was great off the start. Like this has been a trend for the Leafs all season long of starting poorly. They have a tendency not to play very well in the first period, and especially the first half of the first period. Now, granted, they did worse in the second half of the first period this game, but this has been a problem for them of going down early and then needing to fight to get back into it. And it could have been a lot worse. Joe Will made a ton of great saves in the first period. And then, yes, the Leafs score 7 unanswered goals, but how many like 10 bell chances did the Montreal Canadiens have that will like diving across the net and getting it with the butt of his stick? Like just absolutely incredible stuff. This season has been a test for Joseph Woll to show if he can be the number one goalie that we all as Leafs fans hope that he can be. And so far, he has been living up to it. Yes, he's had the cushion of Anthony Stolarz being there, but Stolarz has been out for 4 weeks. And while there's been ups and downs, overall, I think Joe Woll, if there has been a problem, has not been the problem. He's been solid. He's been reliable. And as he showed in this game, he can steal a game for you. And it's wild to think about a game being 7-3, where the goalie stole the game. He kind of did at points in this one. There, as we said, a couple of just incredible saves from this guy. Really, settling into that spot. And something that has caused the Leafs problems in the playoffs has been goaltending. And when Woll has played in the playoffs, he's played well. And now it looks like he might get his chance to, get a series to himself. Should things continue? Should he stay healthy through the rest of the season and things, will maybe this time go the way we want them in April? When I say we, I mean Maple Leafs fans. I know the Montreal fans watching this are like, we don't want it to go that way. We'd be happy if you blew another first round series. I know. Believe me, I've lived it too. It wasn't fun. I've got my scars from 2021 run deep. That series still haunts me.
Listen, what I tell Leafs fans who say things like get over it or like don't talk about it anymore. If the shoe was on the other foot, the Habs were like the team that was expected to just I muted myself. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
I must have.
I was like, I was wondering if something had happened.
How far back was it?
You were just telling me if the shoe was on the other foot,
right? Yeah.
How things would go. Yeah.
Yeah. If the Habs were like the team that was expected to steamroll, right? And I remember Craig Button talking about it's going to be over in 3. It's not even. It's over before it even starts, and then the 3-1 series lead, you blow it. You'd never stop talking about it, right? Like as a Leafs fan.
Oh god, no. Yeah.
It's in there forever until another series happens, at least. But yeah, about this game, like Woll was incredible. Nylander, obviously incredible. I thought Bobby McMahon had a really strong game for for Toronto. Sorry. On the Montreal side, I thought a lot of players had a really strong game. Like you mentioned, all those big saves from Woll. Like we can go through the data, right? And like by expected goals, even after the Leafs had a very, very strong second period, and we could talk about the third period being score effects, because let's be real, obviously, but still, the expected goals over the course of the game were at 5-on-5, 3.18 for the Canadiens, 2.18 for the Leafs. High danger chances were 14-9 for the Canadiens. Scoring chances 30-23. Like they had their chances. It's just Wool was incredible, and the special teams, like the Canadiens' power play, didn't convert in the same way that the Leafs did. And
Yeah.
some penalty issues for sure. But I think both teams could make some conversation about weak calls today. I feel like the officiating was very average NHL.
Oh,
We'll say that.
Marner should have gotten called for that trip late in the third. How that got missed doesn't make any sense to me. As soon as they showed, especially when they showed it on the replay, I don't understand where the refs were looking when that happened. But
I think
yeah,
they
like you
didn't
said,
call it because Carrier like pushed him up, and then he like
okay.
came down and put it. I don't know. It was like they decided that he was in part responsible for how the stick came down. I don't know. But NHL refs, what are you gonna do, man? Isn't like they're gonna answer your questions if you even get a chance to ask them, because you never will. Maybe when they're retired and they won't remember what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How do you see from like the Toronto perspective? One of the things that I have been really having fun with watching for the Canadiens is Patrick Laine. Every single time he gets the puck on the power play, because he doesn't really one-time the puck in the same way that a lot of players do. He kind of like settles it down and whips it, and every time he gets it, I'm like, he's holding on to the puck too long. Everybody's going to be in the way. This isn't even going to be on net. And before I finish my thought, it's in the back of the net. And he just does this like pinball wizard or like seeing eye shot that sneaks through everyone and finds this little gap in coverage and finds a way. Part of that's going to be puck luck. I'm sure his shooting percentage is sky high right now. But man, that guy knows how to score goals.
Yeah.
Not a lot of other aspects to his game have come along. Recently, he's still like pretty slow after recovering from those injuries, but scoring goals he can do.
Yeah, I mean, he's got an elite shot. He's one of those guys that like that's always been his thing, and he maybe has, he's bounced around for a couple of teams, and he hasn't quite found his footing anywhere. And you look at what he's doing in Montreal now, and you think, okay, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the right fit. This is what he's been looking for. This is what the team has been looking for. And as you said, there were the injuries at the start of the year. We won't go into what happened and how that all started. We don't need to relive the preseason and those debates. But he's recovered. He's back, and once he gets up to speed, seeing this shot that he's got, if he can get his skating back, that's going to be a real dangerous weapon. And if and when the Habs sneak into the playoffs in that second wild card spot, whoever they may play, potentially the Leafs in the first round, are going to have to be very careful anytime he's on the ice, as you always have to be, even now. And he showed it with that power play goal. Like, that was just an elite shot.
Yeah, he is incredible at just putting that puck through people, and we could say the same thing about Matthews. That I know, like, is Austin Matthews, so you can't nitpick too much. But I think Montembeault had to have that one, the big slapper from the top there. It was deeper in than I thought. It was kind of like just outside the top of the slot, but I think you gotta strafe out a little bit and cut that angle down. You can't let him beat you from there.
This is what elite goal scorers do. It's what Matthews does consistently. It's what Laine does. It's what Ovechkin's always done. Is they score on those plays where you think there's always a higher number of goals that they get there where you think, oh, the goalie should have had that. And then you remember, all right, they're just the best. So it's that extra level of hard. And then you add on the goals that they score that you think, how the hell did they get that in the net? Which wasn't this for Matthews tonight, but he's had a couple in the past week where you've gone, wow, only he could do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of been Matthews' career versus Montreal. He, like, obviously you said not tonight, but when he broke into the league, I remember like the first year, and there was a moment where he like danced 3 Canadiens players through the neutral zone and came in on Carey Price and just embarrassed him. I was like, oh, shit. This is going to be a long career, and this is going to be really frustrating. Like, this is going to be a problem to deal with time and again, and it always is. It seems like he always scores against the Canadiens, although less so in the playoffs, thankfully. He had a good couple of games, I guess.
Yeah, he had a couple of games, but then he went quiet. That if you've watched the Leafs documentary, quote unquote, about that season, they do, one of the good things that you do show is the Sheldon Keefe speech going into the third period, or is it into overtime of Game 6, and he's calling out Matthews and Marner for not scoring and not being good enough. And if some butts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. But if those guys had scored one or two more goals, maybe it's Toronto losing to Tampa in the Stanley Cup final that year.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, hey, if Toronto could ever find a way to get over the hump, and I know they did the one time against Tampa, but I feel like that was like a Tampa having that like dead cat bounce after they had their back-to-back Stanley Cup final wins, or Stanley Cup wins, sorry. I think they could do damage. It's just that they need to believe,
Yeah.
And it's so hard to believe when every time the same kind of thing happens, right? And you just can't get that tiny little bit of self-belief that you absolutely need to have to win in sports. And they have it in the regular season, but as soon as the playoffs hit, it's too much damage.
Yeah, they have it in spades in the regular season, and you see it in a game like this where they go down 3-0 and say, okay, let's score 7. And then as soon as the playoffs come, like you said, they stop scoring. Things they get really tight, and they can't figure out how to get past teams that they should honestly be beating. They should have beat Boston last year. That was a huge missed opportunity. But when I think you score more than 2 goals once or twice in the series, you're not going to win. And this is a team that's built to score goals. So if they don't do it, there's no hope. There is no hope.
When you're a high-flying team, you got to get the puck in the net. All right, I did want to check in quickly on just the Xhekaj stuff, because I know it's probably very different opinions from outside Montreal, but in Montreal, Arber Xhekaj is so loved almost universally. There's some people who don't like him for, I can't even figure out the reason, because frankly, the guy's a good player. He's not like a high-end player, but he's a good lower end of the roster player who can kind of gust up to playing bigger minutes in certain situations. And he's physically dominating, and he's starting to figure out when to make those calls and control his own anger, because sometimes he does go over the line. The way that he handled Ryan Reeves tonight, I thought was phenomenal, because number one, you don't want to spend too much time on that guy, because he's not spending that much time doing much on the ice anyway anymore. He's getting old, and even when he was at his best, he was kind of like a decent fourth line guy. But I love the way that he kind of just looked at the scoreboard at him and tossed him off when he was trying to get him to fight. And then the next time they were both on the ice together, absolutely ran him through. I love that.
The scoreboard point was genuinely funny. Like, that was a genuinely funny thing to do, to just go, why? Like, he basically is saying, you're insignificant to me at this moment. He's saying that to Ryan Reeves. And, Reeves is trying to do the thing that tough guys do in the NHL, which is they're trying to get a spark going for their team. He's trying to start a fight so that his team gets into it, because at that point they're down 3-0 and they desperately need a spark. And Xhekaj, like you said, is smart enough in that moment to go, no, why would I give you that? If you want a spark, you guys better earn it. You got to do it yourself, do it your own way. And pointing at the scoreboard's the perfect, like, why would I even bother? Get away from me, little gnat, sort of response that you can have. And then to follow that up with a big hit. Yeah. Xhekaj is one of those guys you hate, 31 other markets hate, but we all know if he was on our team, we'd be like, nah, that guy's pretty cool.
Yeah, he is pretty cool. It's kind of like, everybody loves that guy on their team, right? It's like everybody, if they had him, would love Brad Marchand.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? But he's the easiest guy in the world to hate.
Yeah. And Reeves is kind of that for the Leafs. Like you said, he doesn't provide very much outside of sort of vibes and the occasional fight anymore. It's very telling that Berube didn't play him at all in the second and third period. You saw Marner and Nylander and other guys sort of double shifting and playing a shift with the fourth line, with the other guys on the fourth line, because they weren't gonna leave Reeves out there. If Xhekaj had already said, I'm not gonna fight you, so there was nothing for him to do. But people in Toronto, for even though we look at Reeves and go, you don't have much of a place on this team right now, people still love him as a person. He's the guy, if you ever go to a game, they have like a video of him hyping up the crowd before the players come out on the ice. Like he's beloved as a person and as a personality, even if his play is insignificant at best.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing. When you have a guy who not only has a pretty limited capacity in which they can contribute, but also on the wrong side of 30, like his career's, on the back end, there's only so much you can expect from the guy. It's why when that contract was signed at the beginning, I think almost everyone was pretty confused about what the goal
was and still is puzzling.
Yes, very, very, very puzzling. All right, let's wrap it for this segment. We're going to talk about Montembeault's consistency issues and Jakub Dobeš coming up in a second here, and then the Leafs special teams as well with Dom. But first, I got to tell you about our new sponsor here on Game Over Montreal, which I'm so excited about, which is Inchu Bijou, a delightfully witchy, goth and glam jewelry store making handcrafted art that varies from subtle silver and gold pieces to glamorous bespoke pieces. Inchu is more than just a company. They've built a whole community through their advocacy and welcoming attitude that has made them an institution in Montreal. Located in the historic Chateau Saint-Ambroise, Inchu Bijou also runs seasonal themed markets called Maleficarum Market, or en français, Marché Maleficarum, where artisans from all over get together to showcase and sell their wares. Drop by at 4000 Rue Saint-Ambroise, Suite 278, and say hi to Astrid and the Wicked team, or head to https://inchubijou.com to enhance your style. The next Maleficarum market will be the weekend of February 8th and 9th, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. And also, if you're looking for a gig and you live in Montreal, Inchu's hiring right now, which, frankly, a lot of people are looking for work. They're looking for somebody to manage their desk during the day. They're looking for some product managers, some back-end stuff. So head on to inchubijou.com, check out their hiring section, and see if maybe there's something in there for you as well. There's lots of stuff to look at over the next little while here, as Inchu is both expanding and hosting a bunch of stuff on their own end. All right, let's switch to our second segment here. I'm going to start with Habs stuff because it's Habs home stuff, and frankly, after that 7 straight goals, I feel like we need to talk some Habs a little bit. That was rough. It was rough to watch, Dom. So Montembeault is a goaltender who I really like in general, and I think he's better than like the general fan thinks he is, because this team has struggled so mightily in front of him over the last several years on the defensive side. And if you look at the numbers, like the goals saved above expected over the last couple of years, he's actually one of the top goaltenders in the league by those metrics, even though his save percentage is not gaudy. He plays relatively consistently, but this year he has really struggled. It's kind of been like either a shift game by game where he's going back and forth, or he'll have stretches of a couple weeks where he's playing really, really well and then really, really struggling. It seems like the biggest problem, honestly, is like distance shots, where he just kind of loses them in coverage. Maybe he's not able to fight through coverage as well. Something's going on. But I'm looking at the tea leaves here a little bit with Jakub Dobeš coming in and having this incredible, incredible start to his career. And you look at how things are in goaltending now these days, I think it's easier for established goaltenders to be displaced by young goaltenders than it's ever been. It seems like there's an idea in goaltending around the league that like the top echelon of goaltending is gone. Like we no longer have that period of time where it's like either, Dominic Hasek, Patrick Waugh, or Ed Belfour or Marty Brodeur are winning the Vezina. Like that's the only guys that are going to win it. Maybe Cujo. Like it's got you got 4 or 5 guys at the top, and there's the rest of them. There's a big glut of decent goaltenders, and that doesn't really exist anymore. There might be like the Connor Hellebuck at the top, but that solid 5 group or something that doesn't really exist. I feel like now it's that middle pack between like 10 and 35, 40. There's very little distance in there. And that's the big difference in goaltending today, is that the top is now like 40 deep instead of 5 deep. And like there's a gap in that 40 for sure, but the gap is less than it's ever been. So you can have guys like Jakub Dobeš coming in, having a hot start, and all of a sudden Sam Montembeault's starting goaltender job doesn't seem so safe.
hmm I mean, we've seen the shift towards the idea of the tandem goalie, and
Yes.
that's something that you know. I know we're talking about Montreal, but like that's something that the Leafs did have utilized very well to start this year. There was a section there, sort of in the for sort of November, December there, where Anthony Stolarz and Joe Woll together were dominating the net and dominating the league. Like we were seeing, stats about Leafs goaltending that we've never seen before. You'd have to go back to that sort of Cujo, Eddie Belfour era, where these guys together were making it happen. And I will admit I don't follow every team very, very closely other than the Leafs. But what you're describing there sounds like that might be the way forward for the Montreal Canadiens. If Montembeault might need to settle into more of a tandem position there, and if you can have two good goalies going at the same time, that can really work for you. I don't think anybody will ever quite have the same tandem that Boston had last year in
No.
terms of just sheer quality, but if you can find something that works with a 60-40 or 55-45 split of the net between the two, then that's a good way to keep them both healthy, keep them both rested, and keep them both ready for when the playoffs roll around.
Yeah, and frankly, like that's the situation that Montembeault's been in for the last couple of years. Like there's been injuries too, but he's split time with Jake Allen. He split time with Jake Allen and Caden Primo last year. They were running 3 goalies for most of the year until Allen got traded to the Devils. He's played 34 or 35, I guess, of 45 games this year, which is the big change for him. And maybe that's the problem with the consistency is he's not getting the rest anymore. Now he's being forced to play too much, and it's affecting him a little bit. After this game, he'll be down. His save percentage will be below 900 for the first time since 21-22 when the Habs were a real mess. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Habs play with their goaltending choices over the next little while. Dobesh will be in tomorrow as the Habs take on the Rangers tomorrow in a back-to-back, and I'm assuming that they'll play pretty guilty in that one after giving up 7 in this one. But, if Dobesh puts out, the performances that he's been giving so far, then I don't know. I think you got to start running him a little bit more.
Yeah, and you want to see what you got there, right? Like you want to see, is this a flash in the pan? Somebody comes up, plays really well for 5-10 games, or can he sustain it? Is there something sustained here? And if there is, then you can start seriously looking at the tandem situation and not putting too much pressure on either guy, and hopefully, keeping yourselves in the race for a playoff spot as we sort of enter into the back half of the season.
Yeah, Trinka in the comments points out the Boston goalie tandem is sheer quality and bestie vibes. Yeah, I feel like that's one of the reasons. Like, obviously, neither of us like the Bruins. I'm assuming, Dom.
No,
and we don't feel sorry for them at all.
Oh, not in the slightest.
Yeah,
we celebrate their downfall.
Yes, but I feel like the combination of the Mitch Miller signing and then breaking up that goalie duo that was like the happy feelings of a lot of like NHL social media. Like people loved the goalie hugs.
Yeah.
Both of those things in a calendar year, the karmic justice, like of course Boston was going to fall apart.
Yeah. It's coming for them.
Yeah. It's over. I'm sorry, Boston, but like you had a very, very long run where you were an excellent team. I mean, overall, probably the best team in the league from like if you were to combine like 2010 all the way until like 2 years ago, they're probably the best team over that time. You only won 1 cup, and you only got that from cheating, which is something you will never forget. I'm sorry, you can't forget it. You had to break a guy's neck to do it and get away with it. But anyway, talking Habs and Leafs. All right, so we talked about the Habs continuing story in Montembeault and Dobesh. You were mentioning before that the Leafs have had some consistency issues on special teams. Tonight, the special teams were pretty fantastic.
Yeah, the Leafs penalty kill has been strong all season. It hit a little bit of a rough patch here this week, but they looked pretty strong tonight. They killed off the first one. They killed off the first half of the Matthews double minor before Line finally got one through. So like they've been good. They've been more than good. So like penalty kill we're pretty happy with in Toronto. It's been the power play that has been the question. And the Leafs love to run out this top unit that involves the core four, all the guys making all the money, and Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares. And then they'll either put Riley out there as the defenseman, or they'll go with five forwards and they'll have Matthew Nyes or Bobby McMahon or Max Pacioretty out there with them. And obviously Tavares is out. Tavares is hurt. He got hurt in practice this week. So they've sort of rejigged it a little bit. And I'm of the belief they need to break up this top unit because they have not had a lot of success. They've looked pretty flat through most of the season. And you see it anytime one of them is down, one of them is hurt, and they bring someone else into the unit, that all of a sudden they find a little bit more life. And honestly, the five forwards tonight of Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Nyes, and McMahon looked far more dangerous than that top line has looked for a while. And this is not to call out John Tavares, because it was basically the same thing when Matthews was out. And I think if Marner or Nylander went out, in the same sort of way, and it was three of them left and two other guys, then you'd probably see something similar, because the other guys get in there and they show, oh, we need to actually like be part of this. We want to earn our stay here. Whereas the other guys feel like they've earned it already, and they keep trying the same things over and over again without any success. So even though the first unit didn't actually get any goals tonight, they looked a lot more dangerous than they have in the past. And it was the second unit that came in and actually scored a couple of power play goals, continuing to bump their percentage, the Leafs power play percentage, up a little bit. But Nick Robertson with the deflection from Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and then Oliver Ekman-Larsson getting a goal himself later on the power play. He's been someone that was brought in to help with this sort of thing, and so far hasn't been as effective on the power play as I think the Leafs were hoping for. So it was good to see him contribute to both power play goals tonight, with the assist on Robertson's and then getting the goal himself. So Leafs just need to, I keep saying the Leafs need to just cause a little bit more chaos on the power play. They have a tendency to sit back and pass and wait for good things to happen. They need to go out there and make good things happen. And I think Robertson and OEL in particular, because they succeeded in scoring, did that tonight. But I also think the top unit, with the additions of McMahon and Nyes, did it as well, and kind of put the Canadiens on the back foot through a lot of those power plays. Even though the Habs did get one or two decent shorthanded chances, one of which led to the Leafs taking a penalty to tie it to even things out. But it was a better game from the Leafs power play than we've seen in a while.
Yeah. Do you think it's a matter of just like too many cooks with all those high end players? It's like too many guys who think like it's weird, because I feel like we talk about this a lot whenever there's like an international tournament, and they're like, oh, you got to take some plumbers in there because like too many talented players, they can't work together. But it's like it's less like what they say in those situations. It's not too many talented players. Is that the kind of talented players that Toronto has, they all, except for probably Tavares, would rather have the puck on their stick most of the time, right? Like whether like Matthews can just be a finisher, sure, but I feel like he's so effective with the puck in his ability to use his body to protect it and push play while carrying the puck, that you don't necessarily want him to be only the OV spot guy or the Patrick Laine guy. Marner, you want him to have the puck all the time too, because he's your main distributor. But also, I feel like Nylander is, of all of them, the best combination of like speed in small spaces along with strength, net drive, like intensity, high shot quality, high pass quality. He kind of has like the best combination of everything for the power play. So you've got a situation where like somebody's going to have to come off this. Who?
Yeah. That's been the question we've been asking on Game Over Toronto all season is, should they go to a more balanced set of units? Because like you said, all of those guys, they love having the puck on their stick. And it's created a situation where a lot of the times it feels like they're looking for the perfect opportunity. They're trying to make the perfect pass and the perfect play instead of creating chaos and putting pressure on the other team. They almost sit back and wait for the penalty killers to put the pressure on them, and then they lose the puck and it goes down the ice.
Yeah.
And I think when you get those guys in there that aren't necessarily looking for the perfect play, they're just looking for an opportunity. That's when things start to look better and start to look good for the top unit. And it's even someone like Nick Robertson, who can score, does have some finish, even though he's struggled at times this year. I think if you put him on a power play unit with someone like Marner or Nylander, who is really good at distributing the puck, then he will put himself somewhere where he can be open and he'll snap it home, or he'll deflect it home like he did with the goal he got tonight.
Yeah, exactly. Marquis Shiankata says from Game Over Vancouver says, "How is Nick Robertson looking, and is he available?"
It's the Nick Robertson saga over the last few years has been fascinating to follow, and I still don't know how it's going to end.
No one does.
I can see him leaving town in a trade, but I could also see him sticking around and scoring a big goal in the playoffs. Like it could go either way. He had a really slow start. He had a really poor start to the season, but he started to pick it up of late. He's still maybe not everything that the Leafs want him to be, and not everything that Leafs fans want him to be, but he is showing signs and he's putting himself in situations to succeed more and more. He still does confusing things. He still has nights where you're like, what are you doing? How is this possible? But more and more he's approaching what I think was hoped for from him.
Yeah, it's getting there. Slow process. All right, let's transition here to the last segment before we do the chat check-in, I guess you'd call it, or the overtime segment, where the chat can ask their questions that are off topic, or if we haven't addressed something that you really want to talk about, throw it in the chat after the third segment, and we will get to it. We promise. We'll get to as many as we possibly can, because we love our audience and the way that they participate in these shows. You are part of the shows. If we miss something, if we mess something up, you correct us. That's the best part of it, is that we get to make sure that the information coming out is correct, and that we get to interact with you all, because it's fun. That's the fun part about these shows. All right, but before we do, I got to tell you about another sponsor of ours here at Game Over Montreal. Even though this is the Toronto and Montreal crossover, we've got sponsors for Montreal, so we're going to show them to everyone. All right, so if you're looking for a way to make awesome memories with your friends, look down on the boards here and you can see Le Saint Motel here in Montreal. Want to take some promotional pictures for your business? Saint Motel as well. Check out Le Saint Motel in Montreal's Sud-Ouest borough. It's an amazing selfie studio located in Montreal's historic Chateau Saint-Ambroise, adjacent to Inchu Bijou, that boasts 12 or more unique decors for you to enjoy and make memories. Hop into their iconic heart-shaped ball pit or transport yourself back in time to Expo 67. Le Saint Motel can also come to you with mobile decor setups available for rent for events, including setup and takedown. Head to lesaintmotel.com for more details, or check out their amazing decors that are always being updated. I think the Christmas ones are done. They've got the Valentine's Day ones getting set up right now. It's really fun. Like, I don't know how to explain this to folks who haven't experienced something like this. And I think there's a lot of older folks who are like, selfie studio, that's so weird. That's so like millennial and lame. But it's just like a little building or a little area where there's a bunch of different setups where you can take cool pictures. You can rent the space for like a private event. We're going to do it for Montreal here shortly, and just get all of our employees here at Game Over Montreal together, have like a couple drinks or something, some snacks, take some pictures, and have fun at Le Saint Motel. It's just a cool area to be in. They've got like, it's just a nostalgic, they've got nostalgic stuff. They've got like cool futuristic stuff. Like if you like romance or just like different aesthetics, there's all sorts of cool stuff there that you can check out. So check out lesaintmotel.com, especially if you're planning to visit Montreal or you live here, because it's a fun time. I really guarantee it. And the people who run it are fantastic. Super awesome people who you will never feel guilty about supporting. All right, so we've got something special about Game Over is these crossovers where we can kind of pick brains of opposing markets and figure out how things are going on. So we'll start with the Leafs a little bit. I'll ask Dom some questions. So I think my biggest question about the Leafs is because my like pulse on fan bases has always been through Twitter. And now I'm no longer really on Twitter that much. Like Blue Sky is getting there, but it doesn't have the same volume of hockey people there. So I haven't been able to see as much of how Leafs fans are taking this season as I usually do. So what is the general feeling of the fan base? It seems like it's a bit of a quiet frustration from my perspective.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think because, as we talked about at the beginning, the expectation for this team for so long has been to be good, to win, and they never do. They never even really come close. Been to the second round once, and we're out in 5 games. There is this feeling of just win. Please just win. Almost what Nylander said on the bench during the playoffs last year. He said, just effing shoot it. Just effing win. Just win. And what's been interesting is, in terms of the standings, this has been the best year the Leafs have had in a really long time. They're at the top of the Atlantic. They have they've stayed there for a while. Florida's kind of nipping at our heels, but we've managed to fend them off for as long as we have. And so this, in a sense, is a really good season for the Leafs. But because of the way last year's playoffs ended and the way all the playoffs before them have ended, that's not good enough anymore. There is a feeling of it's playoff success or bust. And so you then watch the regular season and you want them to just steamroll everybody because you're looking for any sort of sign. We're looking for any sort of sign of like, this is going to be it. This is going to be the year where they stop doing leafy things. They stop going up in series or having to cut, or worse, going down in series and clawing their way back. It's the hope that kills you, and then losing in Game 7. You're looking for any sort of sign. And so when they'll have these rough patches, like, in the last 2 weeks, there have been some real highs and some real lows. People get really, really frustrated with them. And the way people get frustrated with them, you'd think that the team is at risk of falling out of a playoff spot almost. Like, it's that sort of frustration. And then you look at the standings and go, oh, wait, there is, like, we're almost as high as he can go. I mean, sure, you could, challenge Washington for top in the East or challenge for the President's Trophy or like things like that. But in terms of, your best position going into the playoffs, this is pretty much it. This is the best you can, just about best you can ask for. And then you look at the standings and you think, oh, there's a decent chance we'll play Boston again. And you get, and then you want to throw something through a window. So it's that kind of like, it's a lot of hot and cold. It's a lot of like excitement over good, we're in first place, but there's a lot of frustration over just pent up frustration over the last 8 years or so.
Can I tell you what my secret hope is? It's not a secret, actually. My big hope for the Leafs.
Yeah.
I hope they get Ottawa in round 1.
Honestly, that would be so much fun. That would be so much fun. Matt Sundin has been around the team a lot more lately. He had his book come out, and in it, he reflects on a lot of those great Battle of Ontario series that we had that like I grew up on. And for as exciting as the Toronto Montreal series was from the like historical perspective a few years ago, a Toronto Ottawa series would hit me like right in the nostalgia.
Yeah.
And there is a part of me that would think we have to win that one because they never lost that one before. They never all those Toronto Ottawa series that I watched as a child, begging my parents to let me stay up for those overtimes. Those series, they always won. It didn't matter who was better in the regular season. The Leafs won those series. So Toronto Ottawa series, maybe there would be a little bit better feelings going into it, but then again, the higher your expectations are, the harder that fall is when they inevitably go up 3-1 in the series and then lose in Game 7.
Yeah, that's always a tough one. Although I just think it'd be, like you said, it's the nostalgia factor for sure. I feel like a lot of folks who are peak into hockey right now grew up on those Battle of Ontario series and haven't been able to revisit it in a very long time. And it would be really fun to see how wild it would get. Like, I'm sure Game 1 in Toronto would roll out like Gary Roberts at the game or something.
Oh yeah.
Or like Joe Nieuwendyk. and just like roll the
Yeah.
highlights of him shooting that like muffin on poor Patrick Lalime, who was a way better goaltender than anybody ever remembers. He just
Hmm.
got drilled in the playoffs every single year. The poor guy. The numbers weren't even bad, if I recall correctly. Like he was
No.
saving decently. They couldn't get over the hump. That's what people
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah. Yeah,
Unfortunately.
which is what we're hoping isn't the case for this generation of Leafs, but we'll see. But yeah, it would be a lot of fun, and it'd be great to see those, like, just to see those old timers around the team again would be exciting, would be interesting. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping for that. I am a little bit hoping that Boston holds on and we get one more friggin' crack at them, because I do think the road to the cup for the Leafs does go through Boston. I wrote a whole Substack about this going into the playoff series last year, about how the only way to win for the Leafs to win was to go through Boston. And then when they were up 1-0 in the third period there for a hot minute, I was like, here it is. If they just hold on, if they could just hold on. And of course they didn't. And we don't have to relive that again.
Yeah, we don't have to go there today. Not every day anyway. I know that's like the mind of the Leafs fan.
Mhm.
Like the psyche of the Leafs fan is like every day we must relive all the trauma. Just let it sit.
That was the crazy thing about the Amazon series, was they made us relive that series twice in
Yep.
2 different episodes. It was the Nylander episode. You're like, okay, this makes sense. Yeah. And it ends. You're like, all right, it's over. I don't have to worry about it again. And then the Swayman episode comes on. I'm like, not again! For crying out loud, you're gonna make me watch it. And at least with the Nylander one, they made it sad. It was like sad that he lost. With the Swayman one, there's just excitement that he won. I'm like, oh, you're killing me. You're killing me.
So brutal. So brutal. All right. Did you have any questions about the Habs?
Yeah. So I think this has been a really interesting year for the Habs, and I think that the Habs, I think the league is better when the Habs are good, and I want to see Montreal have a good team, and I want them to be competitive, and it's nice to see them, starting to climb out of the basement, starting to find their way again, and looking at that last wild card spot, and you see it sort of cycle between Boston, Montreal, and Ottawa. It makes me wonder for Montreal Canadiens fans, coming out of this sort of quasi rebuild, this post Carey Price era, what would you view as a success for this season? Do you have to make the playoffs? If you miss by 2 points, will it be a success? What is because you're on the climb back up, how much forward motion are you looking for this year?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it really depends on who you ask. I think there are some folks who would prefer that the Habs bottom out one more time and get that high pick. They're less populous now that they've kind of been red hot for a month and winning games, although not when I host this show. I haven't seen a win since December 17th, but you know what? That's all right. But overall, I think people just want, if where they are right now, they don't move up and don't move down, I think people will be very, very pleased, because, being 2-3 spots outside of the playoffs, yeah, it's pretty much the worst situation you can find yourself in as a team, where you're like in the mix but out of it, in terms of you get the least out of that year in like draft capital. You don't get to go to the playoffs as well, so it can feel like a wasted year. But for the Canadiens, they're in that position where like the progress is worth more than what you get out of the season in particular, if you take my meaning. Like there's it's a very young team, but also they have this like young core that's experienced success in the playoffs already. You got like your Suzuki's and your Caulfields who've made it to the Stanley Cup final, and like getting close enough that you can taste getting into that success, I think is going to light a spark throughout the lineup, where they know they can get there the following year. And, it's not necessarily going to be a linear progression. They could be the same team next year, even with Ivan Demidov joining them if he comes over next year. I believe that's the plan, especially the way his ice time is handled over there in Russia by the oligarch head coach, who's not actually a coach. He's just somebody's son, because that's how things work over in the KHL. Although I shouldn't say just the KHL. I think there's a lot of somebody's sons in the NHL too.
Oh yeah.
We've seen it happen many a time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's that. I think I get where you're coming from with that stance of like, you know, play meaningful games at the end of the season, and get that hunger, get that taste. The only caution I would throw to that is the tragic tale of the current Toronto Blue Jays,
Oh,
because if folks remember the 2021 Blue Jays season, they missed the playoffs on the last game of the year, game of the season. They were out, and that was probably the best version of this current Blue Jays team. And yes, they made the playoffs in the 2 years that followed, but they didn't do anything. They didn't even win a game. They got swept in those sad wild card rounds. And then this year they missed the playoffs, and things don't look good for next year. And my feeling after that is, if you have a chance, take it.
yes.
And I think they should. If Montreal is continues to be in this position of fighting for a playoff spot, I say fight it out to the bitter end. And if you can claw in, do it, because as you saw in 2021, all you got to do is get in, and then next thing you know, you might be playing games in the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, exactly. You know, a goaltender can get hot at the right time. A couple of lines can get hot at the right times and power you
Yeah.
through. And I don't know if Montreal, like, I've seen some people, because Kirby Doc had a pretty tough start to the season, right?
Mm.
Coming back after missing a whole year, he's starting to look a lot better right now. But, still it's a work in progress. I've seen some people being like, oh, the Canadiens should trade for a second line center at the deadline. And I'm like, man, do you have any idea what that costs? Like, at this stage in their rebuild, to trade for a second line center is so beyond what they should be doing in terms of like asset management and like understanding what the goal is, because like baseball is, it's a good cautionary tale, but also baseball is so like the teams at the very,
It's very
very top,
different.
right? Like, yeah, like
Yeah.
so much of baseball is you play 162
62.
games
Yeah.
for almost nothing. Like, there very few teams get to actually even make the playoffs. So it's a
Yeah.
really tough situation, right? Like, to make the playoffs at all is a giant accomplishment. So
Absolutely.
I think that they have to take the long view on that kind of stuff and
Fair.
evaluate, and then figure out what they need to add over the next year to get into a better situation. Like, if at the end of this season the Canadiens are close but not quite into the playoffs, or if they fall off at the end and they decide, you know what, Ivan Demidov coming over and maybe David Reinbacher coming in as a rookie next year isn't going to be enough to push us over the hump into the playoffs. And then they decide to make a big move to add a key player like a Patrick Laine again over the summer. I think people will be very hyped about that. But if they were to do it in season, I think I'd be a little bit more worried about like the management process and the way that they make decisions, because that it just feels a little bit too early for that kind of move for me, for the Habs. But in the next couple of years, definitely I could see it. Like 2 years from now, I think the Canadiens are going to be a very difficult team to play against. Right now, I think they're already kind of tough, but like in a spunky way. In 2 years, I think they're going to be really annoying.
That's the hope. And that 2020, again, just that 2021 Blue Jays team. That's what they were. They were tough to play in a spunky sort of way, and then they just sort of fell. They've just sort of fallen off. But yeah, I think you want that's always the trick for these general managers, is having your eye on the now and what can you accomplish this year, but also not throwing everything away and sacrificing everything. And it's an interesting trick. I don't know quite how they do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're like, oh, you didn't do that very well at all.
No, some guys don't. I mean, that was a problem with the Marc Bergevin era here in Montreal, right? Is like every year it was like, panic, what do I need to fix this Band-Aid solution, this? And like sometimes he would hit found gold. Like sometimes he'd be like, I'm going to trade Dale Weiss and Thomas Fleischman for Philip Deneau. And you're like, holy crap, how did you pull that off? And sometimes he trades like some lower end but decent players for like fifth or sixth line grinders that they then play 12 minutes a night in the playoffs and get completely dummied by the Rangers. Like, it's silly stuff like that. You really want, like, I think with managers, you just want consistency, right? You want to see like a good process of decision making that makes sense. Like, you can see the blueprint of what they're trying to put together and that it makes sense. And mistakes will be made for sure. Everybody makes them.
Yeah.
But timing is really important, and I think just not overplaying your hand, right? Having the patience and understanding to know that hockey's a very random sport, and you can have the best team in the league for 5 straight years and never win.
Yeah.
Sometimes you
You
got to
can
be careful.
you can dominate a first period and go up 3-0 and then lose the game 7-3.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can, especially tonight. All right, let's take some questions from the chat. So if you're in the chat still and you want to ask some questions, you can throw them in there. Hey, if you want to throw in some Star Wars questions to be off topic, I'm sure Dom and I would love to talk some Star Wars with you. Although
yeah.
maybe he wants to talk Leafs more after the 7 straight goals. All right, I see outrage saying when they were talking about Kay said, I'm not even trolling, I promise, but why do all Leafs players seem actively annoyed with their fans for having high standards? And Outrage says, that's Matt Sundin. I never know what he's going to do. I feel like that is a thing that we see, like, kind of attributed to, sorry, I just put on the wrong thing here, attributed to Toronto players a lot more than other markets. It's probably just because of, like, the scope of the market of Toronto, because let's face it, national media in Canada is Toronto media. That's
Right.
just how it is. And that doesn't mean they're favoring Toronto. Sometimes they say incredibly stupid crap that's like easily disprovable and it's just to like generate clicks or generate some anger to get some rage shares and stuff. But it is a lot of media focus on Toronto. Not all of it good, not all of it bad. Do you think that there is like an attitude among players in Toronto they don't really like hearing those high expectations?
Yeah, it's hard to say, because I think the Toronto players, and especially the high profile ones, are like they've been trained and they've trained themselves to almost try to shut out the noise, because there is so much noise and there is so much noise from the media, and if they give a little, the media will take a mile. Like they will take a line, and understandably, like that's just both sides doing their jobs. Like I'm not criticizing anybody, and so the Leafs players, I think, as a general rule, don't want to ever show signs that they're panicking, that they're feeling like they're going to lose, because that will turn into the story.
Right.
And so that's why you get guys like Marner and Nylander. They seem to be the faces for this, who go out there and will say things like, "Oh, I thought we played well," when they lost 3-0. And you have Chris Tanev out there saying, "Oh, they were the better team," and Marner's like, "We played fine, it was good, we just didn't get the results." I think they almost feel like they just have to push back on that, because if they don't, that becomes the story more than even them if they're losing or not. Because as we talked about, there's so much of a question of, do these guys believe in themselves? Can they get over that hump? And that's already a story every year come playoff time, when the series get tight, where they go down in a series. And so I think they just don't want to show it. They don't want to show it. And so that may come across as annoyance. It may come across as irritants. I wish they were maybe a little bit more open? Sure. But I think it's almost like a self-preservation thing for them.
Yeah. I think back to, do you remember when Dion Phaneuf made a big deal of not saluting the fans one time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's stuff like that I think people focus in on with Toronto. There's always it's almost like a combative energy, and I get it. I feel like Montreal has that combative energy too.
Absolutely.
With Scott Gomez when he didn't score for a year, even though he only played 20 games or something like that, and people did a cheer on the anniversary for him, like a Bronx cheer.
Oh, God.
There's mean stuff that happens in Montreal, but it feels like it's more specific player directed here as opposed to team directed, where it's Toronto, there's so much frustration over how long it's been and how desperate folks are to have a nice, long, successful playoff run that you can really be proud of, that it's just this frustration that comes up, and it's screw all these guys, I hate them all. But most of the time you don't. It's just in those moments you get so mad.
Yeah, when the Leafs go on a rough stretch and they lose a game where you think they should have won, my reaction almost always is not screw this guy, screw that guy, screw that. It's trade all of them, send them all out of town, send them all somewhere else. And so I think it's more directed at the whole team, and so the players kind of become almost they're almost protecting the logo in a
Yeah.
sense,
Yeah.
which is what hockey people always say we want. It's about the name on the front, not on the back. But that's just it is what it is. It's how they survive in Toronto.
Yeah, 100%. All right, there was another couple questions here. There was Trinka says Bergevin short-sighted. Yeah, very. Kay asks me to give Caden Gooley a shout out for his birthday. Happy birthday to Caden Gooley, an absolute menace from the blue line. I really thought that when he put that puck across ice to Suzuki at the end, that Suzuki was going to get that goal, but Joseph Wall's stick shaft.
Yeah, some way, somehow.
It was magic tonight, honestly. Like,
it was incredible.
He was absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. I was really, really damn impressed. There was another question here. Sorry, I accidentally shifted away. Matthew says, why would someone be hesitant to use a timeout? And I think this rolls in with Trinka's other question, which was there a specific turning point in this game, or did it just kind of get away from them? I think the hesitance to use a timeout is so frustrating to me because it's a league or even sport-wide problem where it seems like every coach wants to save that timeout for like running a play in the last minute if you're down by one. But how many games actually do you have that opportunity? And one of the things that I always talk about, like in running this business and trying to get like investors to come in, as well as just how I talk about politics and just life in general, is we always talk about like risk management and like risk assessment. But one of the things that we don't talk about enough is opportunity cost. And the opportunity cost lost by not doing something is often bigger than like the risk of going all in, if you understand what I mean. So that's kind of how I view it. And it's tough with timeouts to like make that call maybe halfway through a game or even early in a game. But you can see when players are rattled, right? And I think like you could say maybe the Lane Hudson penalty, which was a soft ass call, let's be real, might have been the turning point. But I honestly think it was more the Nylander goal in the beginning of the third period there. Before that, I think the Canadiens could have come back in this game. I think they were still playing well enough, getting decent chances, and they got decent chances in the third. But in the defensive zone, things were a mess after that Nylander goal. They were shaken, and then the Leafs go up 4-3. I think if they called a timeout and just settled things down and said, like, listen, calm down. It's the same plan we came up with at the end of the second, right? In the second intermission there, we came up with an idea. Stop. Think about it. It's one goal difference. That's it. You're not in that much of a worse situation. You still wanted to score extra goals to put it away in this period. Calm down. Get back to work. But for some reason, coaches don't want to call that timeout. And that's where I think the game shifted on the Canadiens, where it was no longer in control. What about you, Dom?
Yeah, I think I agree with you on in principle on sometimes you just got to use the timeout, and Leafs coaches have actually used it fairly effectively at kind of non-traditional points over the last few years. Berube's taken some early timeouts, like first period timeouts. Sheldon Keefe used to do that as well. And usually you see positive results. It gets things back, gets things focused up, at least for the next little bit. And I think you could make the case that after either the OEL goal or the Matthews goal, I think you take a timeout there and you settle things down. The Leafs have just shown that even a 3-goal lead is not safe in this game. So a 1 or 2 goal lead, if you take that timeout, you say, like, guys, settle in, settle down. Let's focus up. You have enough time left to score another goal or two, and force this thing at least to overtime, if not win it. So I think somewhere in there with the fourth or fifth goal from the Leafs, somewhere in there, if Marty St. Louis takes the timeout, maybe that pays off for Montreal, and if not results in an overtime or a Montreal win, at least makes it not 7-3.
Yeah,
maybe it's 5-4, 6-5, something like that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things where, I bring a lot of parenting into the way that I talk about hockey now, because so much of my life is handling 2 young children. And it's amazing what can be accomplished by just like taking a beat and breathing in and out slow. Just
Yeah.
calm your heart a little bit, let your body relax, and then get back to it. You want to be hyped up, sure, but sometimes you do need to calm that jittery portion of yourself and just regulate, and it's tough to regulate. I mean, as an adult, I still have trouble dealing with my emotions, and
Yeah.
keeping a straight head on all the time. It's tough. And as a
Yeah.
professional athlete, it's got to be even tougher because the emotions run high, right? And sometimes the job of a coach is just to help. It's not necessarily about strategy. It's just about helping guys regulate, get in the right frame of mind. Sometimes that's about a big pregame speech. Sometimes that's just about calming down. Like we were
Yeah.
joking on Blue Sky during the game. I saw Kay and Ian Boisvert from Locked On Canadiens, which is another show that we love with our other friend Laura Saba. Well, they were joking about what they would do in the second intermission. I was like, just cuddle puddle. Get everybody, feel each other's heartbeat, get everybody on the same wavelength, and you're back out there. You're all good. It's amazing how much just a hug will do, honestly. And I know I'm putting this out there randomly, but especially us boys who aren't conditioned to show emotion and stuff, hug each other, dudes. It's okay. All right. I think that's all the questions we got for now. But it was a great time here with you, Dominic, and I can't wait to do this again sometime. I think we only have one other Leafs game this year, though, between the Habs.
Yeah, we've reached that point in the season where there's less games ahead than there were behind. So we got one last one to go. But yeah, this was great fun. It's been an absolute pleasure and a joy chatting with you tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And frankly, that next game might actually be important, which is exciting. I mean, it'll obviously be important for the Leafs. Usually every game kind of is, but for the Habs, playing important games and late in the season, it's exciting.
Yeah, it would be like I said. I think the league is better when Montreal is good, and the fact that you guys will be playing some exciting games down the stretch, I think is a positive, and hopefully you continue to build on that.
Yeah, I think honestly, and I've said the same thing for a long time, that I think the league is better when the Leafs are good, but also just in terms of Canadian media, more money flows in when the Leafs do well. So come on, Leafs. Just one long playoff run for Canadian media.
Seriously.
Won't
somebody think of the media?
Won't somebody pay media people? Please. Our industry is falling apart rapidly. All right, folks. We'll be back at it tomorrow. I believe Kay is hosting for the Habs taking on the Rangers. When's the next Leafs game, Dom?
Next Leafs game is on Monday. I believe Zach and Lauren are going to be hosting that one because I will be at the game.
Ooh, enjoy, have fun. Hopefully they get you a win, my man.
I hope so. They're going up against the Lightning, so that should be an interesting, exciting one.
All right. I forgot to do the merch ad, but hey, head to thegameovernetwork.com. Check out merch for Toronto and Montreal. We've got awesome stuff there. We've got goalie shirts. We've got retro stuff. This shirt here. I'll move the mic. Nope, other side. That's our established line. It's got a cool thing on the back. Good. Yeah, Brady Chalice from Game Over Winnipeg designed everything. There's some cool stuff there, cool hats. Enjoy it. Support a great company that's paying young artists, or not artists, sorry. Well, I mean artists, word artists, broadcast artists,
wordsmiths,
young journalists and analysts across the country, building up something that's actually for young people in this industry, as opposed to the whatever you would call what they make on the broadcast now, where half the ads are for adult diapers. They're not broadcasting for you. Let's say that. All right, folks. We'll see you later.